Sir, you need to step out of the vehicle right now.
For what? I'm just parked.
Step out. We'll talk about it outside.
Ma'am, I'm not causing trouble. This is my car.
Let's see some ID and registration then.
All right. Reaching into the glove box, okay?
Go ahead, slow.
Here, title and reg. Name matches the license.
Yeah, all right. Just hold on a second.
This body cam video didn't just go viral. It blew up the internet in under 24 hours. And once you hear the price of the car involved, you'll understand exactly why. Because this wasn't a traffic stop. This wasn't confusion. This was assumption meeting reality. And wait until you hear how many times this man had already been accused before this moment. It's a quiet afternoon in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in America. The kind of place where the average home costs over $3.5 million, where private security patrols are more common than pedestrians. And parked at the curb is a Lamborghini, shiny green, custom build, carbon fiber everywhere. Value estimated over $400,000. Not leased, not financed, fully owned. But that's not what caught the officer's attention. It was the man sitting inside. And this is where everything starts to go wrong. From the body cam POV, the officer approaches. The footage shakes slightly. Sunlight flashes across the hood. Both Lamborghini doors are open upward, like wings. Inside sits a man who does not fit the picture people expect. Dirty jacket, worn hoodie, heavy untrimmed beard, and eyes that look tired. This is the moment millions of viewers later said their stomach dropped, because before a single word is spoken, judgment has already been made. The officer doesn't greet him, doesn't ask if everything's okay. He commands, "Sir, step out of the vehicle right now." No explanation, no reason. And right here, this is where viewers start leaning forward. His hand enters the frame, close to his duty belt, not drawing, but signaling power. And then he says the sentence that changed everything. "This isn't funny. You don't belong in a car like this." That line alone would later be replayed tens of millions of times. The man stays calm. That's important. Because this wasn't his first time. Like, he doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't insult him. He says evenly, "Officer, this is my vehicle." The officer laughs, not awkwardly and not unsure, dismissive, like the decision has already been made. "Step out of the car," he snaps, "before this gets worse." And here's the part that makes this hard to watch. Nothing illegal has happened, no report of theft, no call from a resident. Just a man who looks wrong in the wrong car. The man nods slowly, keeps his hands visible. He explains he's reaching into the glove compartment and he asks permission. The officer allows it but adds one more line. "Do it slowly, I don't trust you." That sentence would later become a legal focal point. The glove compartment opens. Inside, organization, registration, title, insurance, ID. The body cam zooms slightly as the officer leans in, and this is the moment everything flips. The Lamborghini is registered to him, paid in full, no liens, no loans. His name matches perfectly. And suddenly, silence. You can hear the officer's breathing now, and heavy, uneven. That pause lasts seconds, but it felt like minutes. The officer finally speaks. "Where did you get the vehicle?" And this is where the man's tone changes, just slightly, not disrespectful, but exhausted. Because this wasn't the first time he'd been asked that question, not the second, not the third. This was the 7th documented police interaction involving his car, 7 times accused, 7 times cleared. Over the last 3 years, the man had been stopped repeatedly. Parking lots, gas stations, residential streets, always the same reason. Suspicious vehicle. Possible theft. Every single time, his paperwork proved ownership. And every single time, no apology. One stop lasted 47 minutes. Another involved 3 squad cars, and each time it chipped away at him. This wasn't paranoia. This was a pattern. Years earlier, he was a senior software engineer, Silicon Valley, a salary of $180,000 a year. Startup exit, $70 million plus valuation. His payout, just under $2.3 million after tax. Then tragedy, a drunk driver, a crash, a wife gone, a child gone. After that, nothing mattered. He sold his house, gave away possessions. He didn't become homeless. He became disconnected. This stop was the breaking point. not because of the officer alone, but because it was proof of a systemic assumption. Within weeks, civil rights attorneys reviewed his history: 7 stops, 7 clearances, 1 pattern. The lawsuit wasn't about money. It was about harassment, repeated unlawful detentions, violation of civil rights. Estimated damages between $5 and $7 million. And suddenly, this body cam footage wasn't just viral. It was evidence. Back on the footage, the officer hands back the documents. No apology. The man looks directly into the lens. Calm, composed, he says nothing. And that silence says more than words ever could. The man keeps his eyes on the lens, not defiant, not angry, just steady. And that moment, that look, is where everything changes. Because up until now, this was just another body cam clip, another tense interaction, another uncomfortable stop. But what viewers didn't know yet is that this man had already started documenting everything, every stop, every accusation, every officer who asked the same question. And this footage was about to become the final piece. For years, he kept records, dates, times, badge numbers, not because he planned to sue, but because he knew one day he'd need proof. Because when you get accused once, people say it's coincidence. Twice, they say it's bad luck. But 7 times? That's a pattern. And patterns don't lie. After this stop, the man didn't drive away angry. He didn't post online. He didn't call the news. He went home, sat down, and opened a folder on his laptop. Inside were police reports, body cam request confirmations, dash cam case numbers. Some incidents dated back 3 years, different cities, different officers, same accusation, possible stolen vehicle. And here's the part that made attorneys immediately pay attention. And not once was he arrested. Not once was the car impounded. Not once was ownership disputed after paperwork was shown, which means every single stop ended the same way. Cleared, released, no apology. But each time cost him something: at times, dignity, safety. One stop happened at night, lights flashing, weapons visible. Another happened while he was parked at a grocery store, surrounded by bystanders, phones out. And every time the looks were the same. Judgment first, facts later. He began to dread driving his own car, not because he feared criminals, but because he feared assumptions. Imagine owning something legally, paying for it outright, and still being treated like you stole it. Over time, the stress changed him. He stopped trimming his beard, stopped caring how he dressed, not because he gave up, but because he was tired of performing respectability for strangers. And that's the irony. The more he stopped trying to look acceptable, the more stops he got. Which is exactly what civil rights attorneys later pointed out. After this final stop, he sent everything to one law firm, just one. They called him back within 2 hours, not because the case was emotional, but because it was clean, repeated stops, no probable cause, same vehicle, same outcome, and now, a viral body cam clip. The attorney told him something that stuck. This isn't about one officer. This is about a system that keeps making the same mistake. And that's when the decision was made, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. He filed the lawsuit, not quietly, not anonymously. His name, his history, his evidence. The filing outlined every stop, every minute detained, every phrase that crossed the line, including this one. You don't belong in a car like this. That sentence wasn't just offensive. It was actionable. Because in court, language matters. Assumptions matter. Intent matters. The lawsuit claimed unlawful detention, civil rights violations, patterned harassment, and the number attached to it made headlines. $7 million, not as punishment, as deterrence. And once that number hit the media, everything shifted. The department that stayed silent suddenly spoke. Statements were released, then revised, then retracted. The officer involved was instructed not to speak publicly, but behind closed doors, internal reviews began. Supervisors watched the footage, paused it, replayed it, not looking at the man. But at the moment, the tone changed. At the moment, assumption replaced protocol, because that's where departments get sued, not for stops, but for how they're handled. And this is what makes this story bigger than one Lamborghini. because this man wasn't asking for special treatment. He was asking for equal treatment. To not be assumed guilty because of how he looked. To not have to prove ownership over and over again. And that's why this clip resonated so deeply, because almost everyone watching recognized the feeling, not necessarily with police, but with judgment. And here's the part that truly stunned people. Even after filing the lawsuit, he kept driving the car. Same Lamborghini, same appearance, not to provoke, but to exist. And for the first time in years, something changed. Fewer stops, longer glances, but fewer confrontations. And because once a pattern is exposed, it's harder to pretend it isn't there. The man never gave interviews, never went on TV. He let the footage speak. And that footage did exactly what it needed to do. It forced a conversation no one wanted to have about appearance, about power, about how quickly assumptions turn into actions. And that's why this video didn't fade. Because it wasn't about outrage, it was about recognition. The recognition that if this can happen to a man with proof, it can happen to anyone without it. And that's where part one ends. Not with resolution, not with justice yet, but with a question that still hangs in the air. How many times does someone have to prove they belong before we stop questioning it? The lawsuit didn't stay quiet for long. Within days, internal emails started flying, not between patrol officers, but between supervisors, legal teams, and city attorneys, because this wasn't a random complaint. This was organized, documented, and now public. And the first thing the department realized was this: they weren't defending one stop. They were defending a pattern. Every prior interaction was pulled, every call log, every CAD entry tied to that license plate. And when they laid it all out on one timeline, the picture got uncomfortable fast. Different officers, different locations, same outcome. Stop, question, delay, release, over and over again. No citations and no arrests, no charges, just repeated interference. That's when the word liability started showing up in emails. Because in civil court, repetition changes everything. One stop can be argued as caution. 7 stops become conduct, and conduct becomes policy failure. The city's legal team requested a risk assessment. The number that came back made them nervous. Best case scenario? Several $1 million. Worst case? A jury trial. And juries don't like patterns, especially not ones they can watch. Behind the scenes, the officer involved was instructed to provide a statement. Not for the public, for internal review. He sat in a small interview room, no body cam, no audience. And when asked why he used that language, his answer was simple. He didn't look like the owner. That sentence never reached the public, but it made its way into the file. And once it did, the tone of the case changed. Because didn't look like isn't probable cause. It's perception. And perception doesn't hold up in court. As the lawsuit moved forward, depositions were scheduled, not just for the officer, but for supervisors, dispatch, training coordinators, anyone connected to the decision-making chain. That's when the city tried to settle quietly. The first offer came through fast, low, confidential, no admission of wrongdoing. The man declined, not because it wasn't money, but because it was silence. And silence was the one thing he wasn't willing to accept anymore. The second offer came with conditions. Higher payout, still confidential, still no accountability, declined again. By now, the story had spread beyond social media. National outlets were watching the docket. Civil rights organizations filed amicus briefs. Former officers spoke publicly, not defending the stop, but criticizing the system that allowed it to repeat. Pressure mounted. And that's when the department made a move no one expected. They announced an internal policy review. Language guidelines, stop justification requirements, body cam audits, all announced within weeks of the lawsuit filing. Not because reform was sudden, but because exposure was. The officer involved was placed on administrative leave. No press conference, no explanation, just a line in a statement. Pending investigation? Behind closed doors, union representatives advised him to prepare. Not for discipline, but for separation. Because once a case like this reaches a certain point, the badge becomes a liability. The city made a third offer. This one was different. 7 figures, no gag order. Policy changes written into the agreement. The man accepted, not as a victory, but as a conclusion. The settlement was announced quietly, no dollar amount officially released. But insiders confirmed it landed near the top of the original range. And here's what didn't happen. No apology video, no public ceremony, just paperwork and signatures. The officer resigned weeks later. No statement, no farewell. His name disappeared from the roster. And the department moved on. Or at least tried to, because the footage didn't disappear, it stayed online, shared, reposted, used in training sessions, law classes, policy debates, not as entertainment, but as evidence of how quickly authority can drift when assumptions go unchecked. The man kept his car, kept his life. But something changed, not externally, internally. He stopped documenting after that, not because he stopped being stopped entirely, but because the tone changed. Questions became shorter. Stops became briefer. Proof was accepted faster, because once a system is forced to look at itself, and it rarely looks the same afterward, and that's the part people miss. This story didn't end with money or discipline. It ended with awareness, the kind that doesn't trend forever, but sticks. Because the next time an officer approached a luxury car and saw someone who didn't fit the image, there was a pause. And sometimes that pause is enough. If this video made you think twice, don't scroll away. Subscribe for real body cam stories that expose what assumptions can do when power goes unchecked. Because the next video might not end the same way.